Okay. Horayot daf Yudal Amud Aleph. Okay, so this week I'm going to ask a question before we start. Okay, I'm going to take a poll. I know you know, and then we'll see at the end who's right. Okay? Which is better? To have a lot of knowledge, to know all sources, to know kol haTorah kula, but not to be sharp and be able to connect things and be able to really analyze things and to understand things all the way to the end. Or the opposite, to have a really sharp analytical mind, be able to really understand things, but not necessarily to have all the knowledge. Which is better?
ידע.
ידע עדיף.
סליחה, לא הקשבתי, הייתי עסוק עם...
חריפות.
חריפות? מה הכוונה?
ידע או חריפות? מה עדיף?
חדות, מה?
אוקיי, ידע? אמרת? חדות. יש פה מחלקס. חדות? מה אתה אומר, קובי?
לא, אני אמרתי גם חדות, חריפות.
יש פה 3 לחדות ו1 לידע.
Is there like entirely like schools of thought, like maybe isn't there like mahalachs in learning, like whether you should do more
בקיאות או בעיון?
That's the shaila, right?
In a sense, yeah. אוקיי. אז אם הולכים אחר הרוב, התשובה היא חדות.
רגע, מה אתה אמרת?
אני יודע את התשובה כבר.
מה זה יודע? אין פה נכון לא נכון.
באמת? בואו נתחיל. אמר רבי יוחנן, פליגו בה רבן שמעון בן גמליאל ורבנן. אחד אמר סיני עדיף, ואחד אמר עוקר הרים עדיף. Okay, so there was an argument between Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel and the rabbis. One said Sinai is better, and one said Oker Harim is better. Okay, Sinai is someone who, and Rashi explains this, all the Mefarshim explain this. Sinai is someone who yesh lo yada, he knows everything. Torah mi Sinai, kilu hu haya b'Sinai, kibel Torah mi Sinai. Oker Harim is uprooting mountains, someone who can take a question and break it apart and smash it and reassemble it. Okay, so one thought Sinai was better, one thought Oker Harim was better. And now we have a story. Rav Yosef Sinai. Rav Yosef was known as someone with this just incredible knowledge. He knew everything. Rabba Oker Harim and Rabba, who was his contemporary, they were the two Gdolei Hador in their generation, but they were different. Rav Yosef knew everything, and Rabba didn't necessarily know everything, but he was very, very sharp. Right? So Rav Yosef was a bikiyut, and Rabba was a biyun. Okay? Shlachu letaman. They sent to them, Eze mehem kodem, which comes first. Shlachulu Sinai Adif. So Shai was correct, actually, that it's better to have yeda.
Both of them agree.
What?
Both of them, shalchu means they both agree to this.
No, shalchu means they sent a question. They sent a question to answer.
No, they asked him. The second one
they answered.
They returned. So it's a plural. They both said the same thing.
Oh, who did they send the answer to? Who did they send the question to? They didn't send it to Rav Yosef and Rabba. It's just a question was asked and the question was answered. Sinai is better. Why do we know Sinai is better? Okay, this is a phrase that's used in another context, but it basically everybody needs the master of the wheat. In other words, the person who has the chita. Everybody needs the chita, because chita you need it to live. So to the Sinai is the most important because you need the person who knows the things. If you don't know the things, so what good is your pilpul? Okay? So based on that, if we say Sinai is Adif, Rav Yosef, who was a Sinai, should have taken precedence over Rabba, right, who was an Oker Harim. So nevertheless, even though the psak came in that it's better to know everything, that the bikiyut is more important than biyun, Rav Yosef refused to accept upon himself the authority. Malach Rabba esrin utarte shnin. So Rabba was then Malach. They use this in the context like Melech, but it's the Rosh Yeshiva. So he was in charge, Rabba, for 22 years because Rav Yosef refused to be the Rosh Yeshiva. Vehadar Malach Rav Yosef, and only once Rashi says Rabba died, right after 22 years, then Rav Yosef agreed to do it. Why did Rav Yosef refuse? Because of Rabba's honor. Right? He didn't want to do it because he knew it would be an insult to Rabba if he took it. And all the years that Rabba was the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Yosef did not even bring to his house an umana, which is a blood letter, like from lice, to come. In those days they used to bring someone to come let blood. It was like a doctor. But Rav Yosef refused to even bring someone like that to his house when Rabbah was in charge. We'll see in the next source. We'll see in a minute what that could possibly mean. Okay, but that's the story there. Now we have a similar story. Abai v'Rava Rabbi Zeir v'Rabba bar Matna. Okay, so we have these four gedolim. They were the following generation. Okay, so havu yatve v'havu tzrichei reisha. So the four of them were sitting around and they needed to decide who was in charge. So they said anyone who can say something that cannot be mifrich, can't be refuted, can't be debunked, so he will be in charge because he's the one who has the idea that's the sharpest. Okay, so they all said something that someone else was able to refute, but Abaye said something that no one could refute. And the Rabbah saw that Abaye raised his head because he recognized that he had said an idea that couldn't be refuted. So he said to him, Nachmani, which is a nickname for Abaye, so go ahead, you've been zocheh, because you said something that couldn't be refuted. Okay, and now this is actually the end of Masechet Horayot. This is the final section of the Gemara, and then it's Hadran Alach. Ibai lehu, they was asked, Rabbi Zeir v'Rabba bar Rav Matna, hai minayu adif. So Rabbi Zeir and Rabba bar Matna, Rav Matna, which one is better? Why? Rabbi Zeir charif u'makshe, v'Rabba bar Rav Matna matun u'mesik. Mai. Rabbi Zeir was very, very sharp, charif u'makshe, but it was hard for him to take an idea and bring it to a conclusion. He couldn't commit. Right? He was very intelligent. He was able to kind of understand things very deeply, but then he couldn't, bring it to a practical conclusion. And the opposite by Rav bar Matun, he was like slow, analytical. He had to think about things. He wasn't very kind of quick, but umasik. But then he was able to come to a clear conclusion. So which of those is better? The Gemara ends Teiku. Let it stand. Let the man stand. So this is a little different from Sinai and Oker Harim, but on this one the Gemara says Teiku. Although I would argue, and this is already my chidush, that when it says Teiku here, or what does Teiku mean? It means we don't know the answer. But that's actually answering the question.
It means one or the other.
Because the question is, which is better? To be really smart but not be able to answer a question, or to be slow and be able to answer a question. And the Gemara says, we don't know the answer to the question. So it's answering the question, you understand? Because it's
saying the first one.
It's saying the first one's better. It's like a meta answer, Teiku here. I think it is this. Anyway, but yes, Pshat is that they don't actually give a conclusion, although I kind of like that idea. It's like a good way to end the Masechta with this like meta question. Okay, let's actually skip. I put these out of order, but there's the Perush of the Hakotev on the second page at the bottom, where if you remember we mentioned, just to understand the story, that after Rav Yosef refused to be the Rosh Yeshiva, he didn't even invite a blood letter to his house for 22 years. So if you see where it says, Kulhu Shnei de Melach Rava, which is around 7 or 8 lines up from the bottom on the right side, the Kulhu is big, and it's towards the middle of the line. Okay? If you can see it, it's 1 line below Malach in big letters. Okay, it says, Kulhu Shnei de Melach Rava, Filu, Umna Mekiz Dam Lokav Rav Yosef Lebeti. He didn't even bring a blood letter. So, Pirish Rav Hai Gaon Zal. Okay, so Rav Hai Gaon explains this to mean, Kevan de Shalchu Stam Sinai Adif. Okay, so since they sent that a Sinai was better, as we saw, someone who knows a lot is better, V'hishpir Rav Yosef Atzmo, but Rav Yosef, humbled himself. V'lo ratzal linhog srara b'fnei Rabba. He didn't want to, be authority. He didn't want to take that and use that as a reason to be over Rabba. Haya cholek lo Rabba kavod umaspik lo kol tzrachav. So Rabba, as a thank you to Rav Yosef for allowing him to be the Rosh Yeshiva, he provided for Rav Yosef. She'afilu mekiz dam lo היה צריך לקרוא לביתו לפי שהיו נעשים כל צרכיו מביתו של רבא. In other words, what does it mean that Rav Yosef didn't refuse to be the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabba was the Rosh Yeshiva? All the time that Rabba was Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Yosef didn't even have to have a blood letter in his house. It means that Rabba used to do it for him. What?
I'm saying it's pretty weird just saying because you're at the Rosh Hashanah, you're not gonna go the doctor. It's like, what's the connection?
But
He's saying he
He's
was
done the
taken,
whole
it means that Rabba
he was
shilem al
taken
ze.
care of.
He was taken care of. כאילו הוא
Rabbi took care
הוא
of
עשה
him.
את זה בשבילו. Maybe he went to Rabba's house, whatever. That Rabba took care of it for him to show that the two of them respected one another. Like he was humble and deferred to him, and so he took care of him. That's what that means, according to Rav Hai Gaon. Rashi zal perish afilu umna lebeit elokra shelo ratza linhog srut la'atzbo kol otam shem shemlach Rabba. So Rashi explains a bit differently. He says, no, Rav Yosef didn't himself bring a bloodletter to his own house, not Rabba. שלא רצה להביא שום אומן בתוך ביתו, אלא כשהיה רוצה להקיז דם, היה מכניס אומן לביתי לרבה, ולשם היה מקיז דם. So it means that this is like extra showing how humble Rav Yosef was. Not only did he refuse to be the Rosh Hashiva, but even if he needed like something medical, he wouldn't do it in his own house. He'd go to Rabba's house to show, like to be, Rabba's the place that you do this sort of thing, to show extra kavod to Rabba. That's how Rashi understands it. Okay? V'lo da'ik gaban. And then Hakotev, this Perush says, but this doesn't make sense to us. What is the srara or the kavod in inviting a bloodletter to your house? He says, it's a medical thing. Right? Every shmo on the street invites a bloodletter to his house, obviously. So Rav Yosef saying, no, I'm not going to have a bloodletter because that would be disrespectful to Rabba. We talking about every person has a bloodletter. So de'atu al kocha kaile midate de nafshe hu de'ate ubezuze hu de'ate. It says adarabba. When someone, if Rav Yosef would have invited a bloodletter to his house, it's not pleasant to have a bloodletter come, right? It's disgraceful. So the fact that he wouldn't do it perhaps would be a sarah. So he says that doesn't make sense to me. The odd katav zal, he says now Rashi actually gives another perush. V'id'amre afilu unelvete lo kara shelo היה לו פנאי להקיז את עצמו כל אותם שנים שמלך רבא מחמת שעוסק כל שעה בתורה לפני רבא. The reason when it says that Rav Yosef didn't even have a bloodletter in his house is because he was so busy learning Torah by Rabbah that he didn't even have a chance to have a bloodletter in his own house. That's what it's coming to teach. But then HaKotev says, V'chulu hani perushe lo daike gaban. So he says, we saw three opinions. We saw Rav Hai Gaon's explanation that Rabbah used to provide for him. We saw Rashi's first explanation that Rav Yosef used to go to Rabbah for it. We saw Rashi's second explanation that it means that he was too busy learning Torah. The HaKotev says none of these three make sense. Which is a great line. He says all of these explanations are far away and a big stretch. She says, therefore, it seems to us, so what does it mean that Rav Yosef never had a bloodletter in his house? Since Rav Yosef humbled himself, and he didn't want to assert authority in Rabbah's day, his humility acted as a source of merit for him. Okay? So all the time that Rabbah was the Rosh Hashiva, no one in Rav Yosef's house got sick. That's why it didn't.
More sense, pshat-wise.
So you agree with HaKotev, yeah?
Very much.
Yeah, that's what is coming to say.
I was thinking that in my head when we originally read it.
And then Rav Hai Gaon threw you off. Yeah. Right. No, I also think it's actually the simplest explanation. It seems to be the straightforward. And then he concludes, he says, Hadin hu perusha distaber lanba. He says, this is the explanation that makes the most sense to us. Hu perush ma'al yahu. And he says, and this is the right perush. Okay? So that's how HaKotev understands that Gemara, but he quotes and rejects two explanations of Rashi and an explanation of Hai Gaon. Okay. Good. Let's go back. לא יודע. אני חושב, אבל יכול להיות שאני טועה, אני חושב שהכותב זה העין יעקב עצמו. העין יעקב זה רב יעקב אבן חביב, שהוא חי ב-1500 ומשהו. אז לפני כזה 500-600 שנה. הוא זה שכתב את העין יעקב, את הספר שארגן את כל האגדות מהתלמוד. אני לא בטוח בזה. So he actually doesn't say a lot. Hakotev. He's like a much less like. There's other perushim that we've learned in the shiur. Hakotev is like every once in a while, suddenly he just writes a whole thing like pa'am beh. You see here, he had a lot to say.
Yeah, it's from the Machaber.
It's not a good name, right?
Machaber of Ein Yaakov.
It is the Machaber of Yaakov. Yef. Okay, so it's Rav Yaakov Ibn Chabib. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay, so let's learn a couple of quick. So the other question that I want to ask is. 1500. Yeah. Where did he live? He was.
I don't know.
I forget. He was a Mizrahi, I think. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just learn a couple of mefarshim now that explain other parts of this Gemara. First, we'll start in the Gemara in Sotan Daf Hey Amud Aleph. Amar Rav Yosef, L'olam yilmad adam midat kono. A person should always learn from the will of his creator, namely HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Why? שהרי הקדוש ברוך הוא הניח כל הרים וגבעות וישרה שכינתו על הר סיני. Right, that this is a famous idea, right? Har Sinai was the littlest mountain. Hashem didn't give the Torah on the big mountain over there and the big mountain over there. He gave it on Har Sinai bedafka to show how important it is to be ba'anava. Right? וישרה שכינתו, והניח כל אילנות טובות וישרה שכינתו בסנה. And Rav Yosef continues and says, and that's also why Hashem appeared to Moshe Rabbeinu in the sneh, because the sneh is also humble, thorns. It's not a fancy tree. It's not a big thing. Okay. And then at the end, that's at the beginning of Sotah. At the end of Sotah, this is actually one of my favorite Gemaras. It just came up here, Derech Agav, but I love this Gemara. It's the end of Sotah, the last page of Sotah. Mishemet, it's going through a list of all these Rabbanim, where it says, when this rabbi died, something left the world. You know, some midah left the world. When this rabbi died, Gedula left the world. When this rabbi died, okay. So then it says, Mishemet Rabbi, when Rabbi Yehuda Nasi died, Batla anava v'irat chet. Okay, humility and fear of sin left the world. Amalei Rav Yosef, Latana. So Rav Yosef said to the guy who said this idea, there was some rabbi who said this idea, Rav Yosef said to him, La titznei anava, don't teach that humility left the world when Rabbi died, Dika ana, because I'm still alive. So great, it's such a good line. It's so good.
There's no one more humble than
yeah, it's beautiful. It's so good. Amalei Rav Nachman Latana, and then Rav Nachman said also, La titnei yirat chet, don't say that fear of sin left the world when Rabbi died, Dika ana, because I'm still around. Okay, so, and this is how the Masechta ends, by the way. Like, we're learning. What?
It's not the first place to meet the church. Moshe, put his hair down and says that. Yeah. Well, there you could argue that Moshe Rabbeinu, he had to, because Hashem told him. But no one told Rav Yosef to come and say, hey, what are you talking about? I'm still... It's good. It's a great troll. It's good. We learned two ends of Masechtot here that have like kind of like yeah, right. The end of Horayot and the end of Sotah, they both have like jokes, I think, at the end of them. So, anyways, so Rav Yosef here is talking about. It says, "I'm humble." In other words, I'm an anav, right? That's what Rav Yosef says. So if you look at the Avat Eitan, which is one of the Perushim in Yaakov, it says as follows: Rav Yosef Sinai. Right, we said Rav Yosef, he knows all of Torah. Pirashi, are you calling Rav Yosef Sinai? Why is Sinai? Sheya baki b'braitot, because he knew all of the Torah Shebal Peh. Yesh lomar dinirmaz b'zeh, had amar Rav Yosef gufei b'sotah dafei. And this makes sense because Rav Yosef himself taught, Demima shishra HaKadosh Baruch Hu shchinato b'Sinai, yesh lilmod anava, right? We just saw this, that from the fact that Hashem rested his Shekhinah on Har Sinai, that teaches humility, because Har Sinai was the lowest mountain. So it makes sense that Rav Yosef was called a Sinai, because he himself taught that Sinai is teaching you Anava. And we know that Rav Yosef was an Anav, right? From this story. In other words, he humbled himself before Rabbah and refused to be Lokech Svara. But also, we know Rav Yosef was an Anav from what we just learned. Rav Yosef have an Anav, Gedita Besota, because he says I'm an Anav. So of course he's an Anav. That's how we know he's an Anav. Okay?
Also, I think the main
What's
reason
the
he said it
last
just to show that.
Sorry, what?
No, I'm saying maybe Rav Yosef said it. First of all, it's okay. I think it's okay to say about yourself that you're an Anav.
Mm-hmm.
And also maybe he just said it because don't think there's no more. You can't reach this point.
Right.
You can still be an Anav. You can still be a Yirat.
Yeah, I agree. Rav Yosef obviously doesn't mean this in
he's teaching something, right? It's obvious that someone at the level of Yosef, especially since we saw how he acted with Rabbah, that he refused Rosh Yeshiva for 22 years. And when he says, I'm still around, he's teaching something about don't give up hope on Anava, right? That it's not that it disappeared. Something like that. I agree with you. Or that Anava doesn't mean that you're gornish. It just means that you recognize, you know where you're great, and that doesn't make you better than anybody else. That's true Anava. So he knew that he was the Gadol Ador. That doesn't make you not an Anav, right? And I'm not sure what the last line means. I don't know. Of Anava Ahani Lezikaron. I'm not sure what that means. Okay. The Yun Yaakov says something similar. So if you see where it's on the right side, there's kind of, it's bracketed off and underlined. Muchach. Okay, Muchach Nemishum Anava Isha Shchinato al Har Sinai v'kaim elan. Right? So Hashem rested His presence on Har Sinai because of Anava. V'hinei Rav Yosef na'eh doresh v'na'eh lekayem. Right? There's this idea that there's some people who expound nicely and then they practice what they preach. Okay, so Rav Yosef practiced what he preached because he preached Anava, right? And he said, I'm an Anav, and he taught about how important Anava is with Har Sinai. Kedita lekama b'sof perek Egla Rufa, mishemet Rabbi batla Anava, Amar Rav Yosef, lo tidnei Anava dik'ana, umehai tama Rav Yosef, haya Rav Yosef Sinai, ki en Torah mitkayemet ela b'mi shedato shvela, right? Because the Torah can only be fulfilled through somebody who is of humble of spirit. And Rav Yosef was na'eh doresh v'na'eh lekayom. He practiced what he preached because he refused to be the Rosh Yeshiva the entire time that Rabbah was alive, 22 years. Right? I want to conclude with some thoughts on the Marsha and then have like a final idea after that. So if we just learn here in the Gemara in Megillah Daf Chavtet, this actually came up I think a couple months ago in a separate shiur. Tanya Amar Rabbi Elazar Kapar Omer Atidem Batei Knesiyot uBatei Midrashot shebeBavel sheyikav'u be'Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so all the shuls in the Batei Midrash that are now in Galut will eventually be in Eretz Yisrael. How do we know this? Shneamar ki ketavor beharim uchecharmel bayam yavo. There's some pasuk in Tehillim, I think Perek Samechet, that Tavor is the name of Har Tavor, right? It's in the north. It's the tallest mountain. Uchecharmel bayam. So alot dvarim kal v'chomer umat Tavor v'charmel. So these two places, shelo ba'u el lefi sha'al el Torah. So the Midrash talks about how they came to learn Torah just for one moment, the Tavor. Nikbaim be'Eretz Yisrael, and the zchut that they came to learn Torah, they were given the zchut to be in Eretz Yisrael. So Batei Knesiyot or Batei Midrashot shekorinu marbitzin bahen Torah. So for sure the Batei Midrash and the shuls where there's constant Torah. So achat kama v'chama that one day they'll be uprooted and brought to Eretz Yisrael. Okay.
It's become a thing now for like Gvirs and Chuslats to build the shul, like shul in their house. It came from that, like you're gonna build a whole fancy house and it's gonna be a waste when Mashiach comes. So they put like a shul in the house so the idea the house will go to Israel. It's a real Indian.
No, that's fine.
I don't know if I told them this is the psak, but I'm telling you, it's legit.
I have a lot of thoughts on that, but that's ridiculous, but fine.
No, I agree. I'm just saying. People are like.
I'll tell you a story, okay? I won't name names, but we were at a family bar mitzvah a few years ago of cousins of in-laws. They were from the 5 towns. They flew everyone into Yerushalayim. They rented out this big hotel in Yerushalayim. They had a bar mitzvah for the weekend. And during the davening, I was like outside at one point, and some of the people were talking. And they were talking about how they just did these renovations on their house, and it's this big house, and they just did this and this and that. And then one of them says, "Yeah, but like, what are you gonna do when Mashiach comes?" Right? That's serious conversation, right? Because they're also yeshivish. So, "What are you gonna do when Mashiach comes?" He says, "I don't know. I kind of like my house. I think I'll stick around in the 5 towns." Like that was but actually that was the real approach. Like I don't want to give up this. I just invested all this money here. When I'm gonna sell it and move. Anyway. But, build a shul and then it's magic. Okay. 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 Continuing. Darash bar kapara. Mai dichtiv lama teratzduun harim gavnunim. יצא בר קול ואמר להם, מה תרצו דין עם סיני? Okay, this is, again, we're not going to get into this midrash, but there's this whole midrash about how Sinai and the other mountains, so Hashem says, why are you guys coming and fighting with our Sinai? כולכם בעלי מומים אתם אצל סיני. You're all blemished
in comparison to Har Sinai, because Har Sinai is humble, right? Ktiv hacha gavnunim, uchtiv hatam o giben o dak, right? These are mumim, giben and dak, giben, gavnunim, etc. Amar Rav Ashi shma mina, hai man dihir, bal mumhu. Rav Ashi says, learn from this story that arrogance is a mum. Okay? Ad kedei kach. Good. So now the Marasha connects this back to our Gemara. The Marasha says, Nireh dedimu, shedimu et asomech al rov shmuato l'Sinai. Right? They compared somebody who relies on his erudition and vast knowledge to Har Sinai. V'she'en be'edo shmuot kol kach l'somech al ma'alato b'charifut u'pilpul le'oker harim. But somebody who doesn't have that much knowledge, but he relies on his sharp intellect, he is an uprooter of mountains. Klape ma she'amru b'perek b'nei ha'ir ki ketavor v'harim u'chechamel b'yam yavor v'alov kal v'chomer u'ma tavor v'chamel shelo ba'o etzlo l'fi she'al limot Torah nigvu be'eretz Yisrael v'chulei, which we just saw. V'od amru sham lama teratzu narim gavnunim lama teratzu din im Sinai kulchem ba'alei mum etzel Sinai v'chulei ulzeh asomech al rov shmuato mishnayot u'bartot tzedurot lo hu kesinai. That's why someone who relies on his vast knowledge is like Har Sinai. She'alav ayu kol shmuot v'kavalat Torah, right? Because the whole Torah was given on Har Sinai, which makes sense. Al mi she'en mishnayot u'bartot tzedurot lo kol kach. Hu somech al ma'alato hu ke'oker harim. He's like someone who uproots mountains. Ke'harim halalu shenekru lefi sha'al ilmod Torah. Right, like those other mountains that were learned Torah for a moment, they were uprooted and brought to Eretz Yisrael. So that's how the Maharsha is explaining why it's Oker Harim specifically. He ties it to this other Gemara and then the Gemara in Megillah. Okay, etc. Fine, and then just this last Maharsha here. Samach hai uvda lahach uvda. So here the Maharsha is saying you have the story about Abai and Rava brought right after Rav Yosef and Rabbah. So he says it's not just stam that one's brought right after the other, because כמו שירה להן שלחו עליהן איזה מהן קודם, כך יראה לתלמידיהן. So it's the same story happened to their students. Why? Abai have a talmid muvhak shel Rabbah, Rava היה talmid muvhak shel Rav Yosef. Okay, so it's the next generation, the same idea of the two kind of Gdolei Ador are duking it out who's going to be the one in charge. Duking it out in like the sense that both want the other one to do it, right? Right? That's how we know about the Yuchsin. Okay. וזהו כי אבו צריכי רשע ולא אבו ידי מקודם. ומסיק דה אביי לא מפרח. Abai was the one who couldn't be refuted. אמר לי נחמני פתח. And so Rava said to Abai, you start, right? אף על גב שכך היה התנאי ביניהם, כל דם המילתא ולא מפרח. Why did Rava have to say to Abai, okay, you've been zoche? That was the whole point. That was the deal. So why did he have to tell him that? No, the reason why Rava said to him, go, you were zoche, is because Abai didn't, even though the stipulations, the whole preconditions was whoever can make an argument that can't be refuted is in charge, still Abai, once he won, did not want to assert his authority, until the other one said to him, go, take it. Right, and just kind of to close it there, so Abai then, who receives the authority, was the student of Rabbah. And Rava was the student of Rav Yosef. So it continues. In other words, Rava gives Abaye the svara, and Rav Yosef gave Rabbah the svara. So each one, the next generation, did the same thing. I want to just conclude with something that I said. I didn't bring the sources, but basically, the question is, so going back to how we started, where I asked, which is better? Is it better to be a Sinai or Cokar Harim? Which is Adif? To know a lot, Bikiyud or Biyun? So you said Chadut, and then we said it's better Yada.
I think Sinai means to be humble.
In this context, it means to know. Yeah, it means to know a lot.
Is it better to be Charif u'Maksher or Matun u'Masik?
Yeah.
It's better to have the knowledge or not to have the knowledge, just depends how you use it. I hear they're asking, is it better to be humble or to be chad? That's why I think in the next question they're saying teku.
זה לא אותה שאלה.
נכון.
כאילו, זה לא אותה משמעות.
לא, הם שואלים אותך, סיני עדיף או עוקר הרים עדיף? כלומר, עדיף להיות ענב או עדיף להיות חד
לא, אבל ענב זה פועל יוצא של בקיאות.
זה לא בהכרח פועל יוצא של בקיאות.
שאומרים שמי שלא ענב, אז הוא לא יכול שהתורה...
וגם, the reason why סיני עדיף is because it's הכל צריכים למראה חתיה.
למה?
זה לא קשור לענווה.
בסוף כולם צריכים את התורה, מי שתבוא אליו, הוא עכשיו לא יודע הלכות מסוימות, אז הוא יכול לנסות לשער מה הוא היה לפי החריפות שלו, יכול להיות שהוא יטעה לגמרי, אימנו את הבסיס.
I think Sinai does you mean humility in the drashot that we saw for sure. The acronym, they tie it together. But I think the original question is a question of which is a better kind of, you need a Rosh Yeshiva, is it better that he knows a lot? Or I think that's the pshat. But
it's also kashur on the Oker Harim and the opposite of Anava. Where you have the arrogance to question more, to be machadish more versus accepting.
I think that's what, right, like they're tied together. Yeah. Like you know a lot, but you're also less of an akshan. Like you say, no, that can't be right. You accept. So I think you're right that it's tied together. You also you want a Rosh Yeshiva. If you have to choose, you want one. Maybe Anava is better than someone who maybe is Charif, maybe he gets to the truth, which is better. Hamet or Shalom, right? Maybe you could even take it to that place. Is it better to be Ohef Shalom or Def Shalom, or Mishus who was like Emet or... Yeah, so you need both, of course, but let me just have one last idea. So the question is, let's say we talk about Sinai as someone who knows a lot versus someone who's Me'od Chad. Would we say the same thing today, that Sinai Adif? What would change today, perhaps? What's different? What?
It's written down.
I go Wikipedia, I go to ChatGPT, I go to shoot Bar-Ilan. I can look everything up.
You still need to know what to look for.
בסדר, but I don't need to know הכל בעל פה anymore.
You
need to know what to ask.
בזמן הזה.
All right.
You need to know, you need to be ושיודע לשאול. That's the...
But that's the עוקר הרים, בדיוק. So maybe today the עוקר הרים you would say, you need to know what to ask and where to look.
You need the base.
But that's...
You need the base.
Meaning
Okay.
it's not
Base.
objectively better.
Means...
So if Shlomo Kluger, who's Nachman lived on 200 years ago, so if Shlomo Kluger says, today where we have more information and everything is more readily available, so I would say this shouldn't apply anymore. Today, okay, Harim is Adif. Ovadia Yosef has a tshuva where he responds to Shlomo Kluger and he says, no, that's not true. Sinai is Adif, and I'll tell you from this source and this source and this source. He writes the whole thing and brings the sources. And what's great about it? If Shlomo Kluger says the reason why that doesn't apply anymore is because of this like pilpul that I do. He's being okay Harim to prove okay Harim is better. And then Rav Ovadia Yosef comes and quotes all these Mikorot to prove why Sinai is better, which is being Sinai. So they're the Shitatam that each one is saying why they themselves is the better one in the argument. So it's a good...
Well,
yeah.
Number one, very important source which needs to be mentioned, yes, from Masechet Avot. רבי יוחנן בן זכאי קיבל מליל ושמאי, הוא היה אומר, אם למדת תורה הרבה, אל תחזיק טובה לעצמך, כי לכך נוצרת. 5 תלמידים היו לרבן יוחנן בן זכאי, ואלו הן, רבי אליעזר בן הורקנוס, רבי יהושע בן חנניה, רבי יוסי הכהן, רבי שמעון בן נתנאל, ורבי אלעזר בן ערך. הוא היה מונה שבחן. רבי אליעזר בן הורקנוס, בור סוד שאינו מאבד טיפה. רבי יהושע בן חנניה, אשרי הולדתו. רבי יוסי הכהן חסיד, רבי שמעון בן נתנאל ירא חטא, ורבי אלעזר בן ערך כמעיין המתגבר. If you want to find the equivalences. הוא היה אומר, אם יהיו כל חכמי ישראל בכף ומאזניים, ואליעזר בן הורקנוס בכף השנייה, מכריע את כולה. אבא שאול אומר משמו, אם יהיו כל חכמי ישראל בכף מאזניים, ורבי אליעזר בן הורקנוס אף עמהם, ורבי אלעזר בן ערך בכף השנייה, מכריע את כולם. So I think it puts that has been debated in that perspective.
Wait, which one's always the one winning? The one who has more
Well, the Hu Haya Omer is the starts from the beginning. Yes, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, he was talking about his students.
Right.
So so according to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkenus, the guy who has the knowledge,
is the greatest.
Takes it all. And Abba Shaul on the counter him says, no, it's the Kimayana Mitgaber. I think that's if you like, the equivalent of the yeah. So I think that you see, so you have that there.
Maybe.
Yes, but I think and this I guess needs to show with the concept of IQ, is at the end of the day there's one intelligence, but you have subcategories of what comprises that intelligence. That means you have you can have the short-term memory, the long-term memory, the three-dimension understanding, or the ability to deduce in general from etc. You put everything together, that's your IQ. So I think that one has, when one has his set IQ, and obviously he has his stronger points and his weaker points. I think and then it adds up. Yes, you would say, okay, so you have ChatGPT, but what you have then? You have the Meturgeman. The Meturgeman, what is the, we're coming up in Pesach. What is the Datzah Chadash Ba'acha all about?
To remember,
it's okay. So there was a guy who actually knew it. So it was a guy who literally knew the whole Haggadah from start to finish. You would say that Datzah Chadash Ba'acha.
Bal Tashchit, to do less this.
There's that, but that was the point of it. It was the memory.
Now we do the 10 and the 3, so it's just.
So you missed the whole point.
It was there to jog the memory,
right?
Of said Meturgeman. You would think, the one of the 10 that were executed was Rabbi Chutzpita Meturgeman. When they found his tongue in the in the gutter, what they say? Zotorav is schara. Again, it's a very big question as far as I don't think that debate has been really settled. You would say, okay, you still need the guy who knows because
it's not that you
comes
both of them,
the end of the world scenario, and
you need both, right?
Yeah.
The question is, certain people have one is more of a strength than the other. If you had to choose, what do you choose? But it's not to say that you can live with just with one. But you're right. I think there's different strengths. I just think it's funny that from the sources I saw, each person who weighs in on the issue is according to what their own strengths were, which I think is just kind of funny.
Anyway, I read it when